Okay, it looks like we're ready to go here at 7:30 on Tuesday evening, August 29th. We'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Rosado?
Here.
Atack?
Here.
Stark?
Here.
Shanzit? Wolf?
Here.
Salvati? Brown?
Here.
O'Brien?
Here.
Callahan?
Here.
Meitzler? Ewer?
Here.
Saron?
Here.
And McFadden.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Next item is item 2, which is the approval of the minutes for the August 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. Anybody have any comments or questions on that? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by McFadden, second by Ewer, to recommend the City Council approval of the minutes for the August 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3 is items removed, added, or changed. I do not know of any. Anybody have anything? Okay. Item 4, matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. So if anybody in the public has got anything for us that is not on the agenda, you could address us up at the podium. Okay, we'll move on then to item 5, which is the consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda, and that is the July financials. Anybody have any comments on that? Questions? Okay. Can I get a motion to recommend the City Council approval of the July financials?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Atack, second by Rosado. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 6, presentation on the electric vehicle public charging and financial incentives. Memo from Gary Holm. Abby Beck is here from the Environmental Commission. It's my understanding Abby's been spearheading this, but we'll let Gary get started with it.
Thank you. Actually, Andrew Greenhagen is here tonight. He's going to make the presentation. We have been coordinating with the Environmental Commission, and I really will turn it right over to him. But basically, this is, as I said in my memo, a program to encourage our citizens to purchase electric vehicles and electric vehicle service equipment for their residences, and encourage them to start using more electricity by doing something green, and that is purchasing and using electric vehicles. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
Will it be retroactive?
No, I wouldn't jump into questions, but as my memo, no, it was only for new purchases.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't see that part in the memo. I'm sorry. I went through it, but I must have gone too fast or forgot.
Thanks, Gary. So on behalf of the Environmental Commission, I'm Andrew Greenhagen, and it's a little bit counterintuitive, really, to think using more electricity is greener, but in this case, it is. Moving from gas-powered vehicles to electric is an environmental upgrade, if you will. So we took a look at, what would it take to institute a program like this? What are the financial benefits or trade-offs to the city and in the environmental aspects? And one of the first things we looked at was, you'll see up on the screen, average kilowatt hours used per car per person per year. So the average driver drives roughly 13,000 miles in a year. And the average is 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles driven of, we just picked some very common plug-in cars up there. Some of them are purely electric. Some of them are, electric with a hybrid backup that is powered by gasoline. And so those are the averages. So we took roughly 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles driven as a conservative average. So an average driver would consume 3,900 kilowatt hours per year. So purely thinking about the financial aspects of this program, if the average consumer consumes 3,900 kilowatt hours per year with their electric car, and the city were to offer a financial incentive to them, how long would it take for the city to get paid back for its investment? And so we did two different scenarios. One is when the city is oversupplied with electricity. One is when the city is fully utilizing its Prairie State agreement. And the numbers are not very different, 194 versus 216, and that's per year. So roughly, if you were to offer $1,000 incentive, 10 years the city would expect to be paid back, and beyond there, it's just, additional usage to the city that would, additional usage for the city's electric grid. And so we actually proposed two different tiers of rebates. So the average electric vehicle service equipment is $400 to $600 for you to purchase that. So we're proposing two different levels of rebates, $1,000 if you were to purchase an electric car and install a charging station in your residence, or just $500 for the installation of a charger only. Now, the Commission's original idea was that the rebate could be applied to a customer's energy bill such that, you know, it's tied to electric usage. It's not just, here's a $1,000 check. But we realized there may be ease of administration that would need to come into play. We don't want this to be a burdensome task for the city or anybody to administer. So, you know, whatever is more preferable to our finance department, whether they want to issue a rebate check, whether they want to do a utility bill credit, you know, that can be worked out in the future. And then the final attachment was just a simple form designed by Abby, and it's a first, you know, crack at what would folks need to submit to prove to us that they did indeed purchase, you know, the car or the equipment and installation of that in the city, because, you know, obviously it's not a good incentive for us if people buy an electric car but they charge it elsewhere. And so there's a spot at the end for three different things, you know, to uploaded the different things we're looking for, the purchase receipts for the charging station, you know, your registration of your car, and the permit inspection. So the city inspector came out to your house, made sure that the electric charging station was installed correctly, and that's another good check to make sure that, yes, indeed, they did install it at their residence, and they'll be using our electricity supply here from the city. So that's a quick overview. We'll entertain questions and such. Abby, if you want to hop up here for input. This is Abby Beck. If you don't know her, I'm sure most of you do.
Sure.
She was instrumental in putting this together. I'm the math guy, and she was the visual person. So,
Nick, got some questions?
Just one, if you can clarify, because as you were talking, you said about a 10-year payback, and then that document says 5-year payback, so I'm just confused. Is that the difference between the two different rates paid?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, it could be, well, it depends on how much electricity you use, right? So, actually, at $200 a year, it would be 5 years, wouldn't it? I did say 5 years. I'm sorry, it's not 10 years, it is 5.
Okay.
And so if you had the lesser package, it would be even a shorter payback period.
Do you
Anybody
know
else?
how many electric cars are in town now?
Lucy, could you use the mic, please?
Do you know how many electric cars are in town?
We tried to find that out, and the Secretary of State does not keep that detailed of information without paying them to dig through their records to find out. They could tell us that roughly a couple hundred cars are registered in the county, but even that data was a little suspect. There's a couple different categories they use to register electric motor vehicles, and all of those cars appeared in the 50 mile per hour and under range, or 45 mile per hour and under range, and the 45 mile per hour and above range said 0. So we're not exactly sure that their bookkeeping is accurate.
Okay.
We wish we knew that.
Anyone else? Dan?
In reading through the material, I noted that the budget, I think, is a little too small. It covers 10 cars. So I would certainly support increasing the budget for this. Seems like a step in the right direction.
Okay. Mayor?
Now, I've sat in on several conversations in CMAP in Chicago, and this is not, this particular situation's been discussed, but the state of Illinois right now is wrangling with the idea of how they're going to get some revenue out of these electric cars, because there's no motor fuel tax being paid at the gas pump. And so I know there's discussions going on that when you go to renew your license plate now, you're going to have your mileage taken down on your car. And then when you go to next year, when you go to buy another license plate, they'll want to look at the odometer and see how many miles you put on your car. And then I've heard they would come up with a fee that they would then apply for the differentiation in the mileage. And so it would be added to the cost of your license plate. And last I knew, I thought they had some state legislation they were writing on this because they're concerned that if there's a real rapid increase in electronic cars, that the motor fuel tax funds, which are paying for the road maintenance, are going to take a pretty direct hit on this. I guess I would certainly support the the $500 for the installation of the charger. The thing I would not want to see us get involved in is start rebating people for the cost of the electricity. And I say that because I'm hearing other places who have done this, and where then if the city's doing that, people show up from other towns and start wanting to hook their cars onto their charging because it's free electricity. So I think you got to be real careful on that, and given the problems we already have with our electric utility, which was no fault of this whole situation, but I think we got to be real careful as to how much money we specifically put into any type of thing where we're rebating on the cost of electricity. In other words, if somebody hooks their machine onto this thing and recharges themselves, there's got to be some kind of a meter on it or something that we know, how much they've used and they're paying the bill for it. And I know some other cities have looked at the idea of putting these in parking garages and letting people come in and use them, and it pretty quickly got into discussion, we've got to have a credit card charge on here where you swipe your credit card and we ding you for the cost of how much electricity you've taken.
Makes sense. Alan?
I'm fine with the $500 on the charging station rebate. As far as on the purchase of the electric car, there's already a rebate, I believe, through the state of Illinois and just about every other state in the country.
And the federal government.
Expired for the state.
Oh, it has
I don't know
expired?
when it will be
Renewed, okay.
Yeah, that was part of it.
And that's the thing, and one of the things the mayor was talking about, I have a brother-in-law and sister-in-law that live down in Georgia, and they actually have a separate charging station. They have a separate electric service at their house, and they pay a different rate on that. That's part of the rebate that the state gave them, is that's a program that they have set up in their state for it. Now, I understand exactly what the mayor's saying, because I just watched a thing tonight before I came here that actually was showing the network that Tesla's got and how they're expanding it, and how other states and other places have done these, and almost all the charging stations that they showed were all pay as you go. You pull up, you throw a credit card in it, you pay for 6 hours worth of charging or whatever time frame you pick, and then, in a public lot, that's how it gets paid. But I think you're right, if we were to have a discounted rate on it, you'd find, 3 people in the neighborhood would all end up using the same charger, or everybody would start using the same one. I mean,
Well,
that's,
people from out of
Think
town
they-
coming in.
Drive into someone's garage and plug in while they're
No,
out.
in a public garage.
So this program we're talking about is purely
for
for
private homes.
private homes.
Right, and
So-
We're not having any discussion on public chargers.
And we're not talking about rebating or discounting the electric cost.
We don't have any time of day rates. This is all the same time of day rates. And at 4,000 kilowatt hours a year, you're basically adding about 20% electric usage. So if we could get every residential house in town to increase their electric usage by 20%, we'd be in good shape. So that's basically what this is doing, is providing an incentive for someone to increase their electric usage by 20%.
We have one in our garage, obviously, and I can't imagine, no one has ever talked to us about plugging into our garage, coming into our garage during the night.
Because it
When-
isn't that popular yet.
But,
We're-
I mean,
we're-
but
Yeah,
we're,
but
when
you're
they
still
need
paying
it.
for the electricity.
People share them.
Yeah, but at night, you're plugged into your car. I mean, the amount we pay on electric for this car is minimal. So I can't imagine that Bob would be willing to pull out his car at night, because people drive to work during the day. So we have staging at home in the middle of the night so people could plug into our garage? I don't think
A
so.
level 2 charger takes 4 to 6 hours to charge. So, I mean, at 2 in the morning, someone in theory could get up and swap cars with their neighbor, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, not at our
To
house.
save pennies.
Right, to save pennies, right.
Well, I agree with Dan. It's time to do it. I mean, I agree. Sustainable design has been around now for a while, and we just haven't employed it enough. And I've always said that, we need to start doing more sustainable design with everything we do, because climate change, as witnessed by Houston, is upon us. And so this will at least help try to slow it down.
This is something that we would propose, just basically including funds in the 2018 budget, and obviously the 2018 budget would come to City Council for your approval. It is only retroactive, so, I'm sorry, it is only going forward, not retroactive, you had me the opposite.
Sorry, but retroactive would be good.
Yeah. It's only going forward, so we're promoting, again, just like our industrial electric incentives, we're promoting new growth. So this is for those people who purchase going forward, and it's only one per household. So if somebody happens to purchase a car this year and then they sell their car in a few years and want to purchase another car, they can't get another rebate. So it's one per household and going forward.
Mark?
Are there any other communities around here that are doing this?
That's a good question. I don't know if there are. I'm not sure how many munis though there are. See, that's the, ComEd has a program to promote the use of electric cars. ComEd has specific electric rate where overnight you can get inexpensive rates to charge your electric vehicle. We're a muni. I mean, we're different than
Sure.
most communities around Chicagoland.
I believe Oak Park, I know they have it in the public lots where you swipe a card. I don't know about their residential garages.
There aren't many people wanting to increase electric consumption.
Nick?
I'll be the cynic in this. I don't think this will incentivize anybody to buy an electric car. Either they were already looking for one and gonna do it, and I don't think this is gonna incentivize. I'm not against this because there's an ROI. I think it's just a little too long. I would propose something a little smaller, maybe a 3-year payback versus a 5-year for us. I mean, I like the concept of using more electricity, but I don't think when we promote this, somebody's gonna be like, I'm gonna go for $500, go buy an electric car. They're either in the market or not. They want a Tesla because it's a luxury item, or they're looking for an electric car for their own personal promotion, is my opinion. But it's an opinion, and I would think we can probably find some research on that too, but I don't think we should act. 10,000 does nothing. I mean, they mentioned 200 cars are probably rolling around. That'll be gone in a week, and then we're gonna be back here saying, okay, we need another 10,000 or another 10,000. This can get pretty expensive, so I would look for a shorter ROI period.
Drew?
Need to throw a little bit of a twist on this, and somewhat in honor of former Alderman Homan, because if he was sitting here, he'd be asking it. This all talks about electric cars, which are generally big, expensive items. But in Illinois, there is I believe, a law governing neighborhood electric vehicles, which are basically much smaller, speed restricted kind of things, essentially golf cart. They go golf cart to something much fancier. But for a lot of the little short trips people take in and around their own neighborhoods, getting kids to school and back when the weather's decent, I think that would be an excellent way to perhaps introduce people to driving something electric, get them out of their own cars. Maybe for whatever reason they can't go all electric all the time because their lifestyle doesn't allow it, but this would give them a way to get into it.
But you wouldn't do that amount.
No, you would have something similar, but I think it would be worth considering taking a look at. I mean, I know there's people out by me now who do that anyway on their own, even though it's not official, but you see them running around. And
I think that's a good idea, Drew, to look at that as a program, as a future program. Maybe something we could ask staff to take a look at, or maybe the Environmental Commission work with them on it. But as far as what we've got in front of us tonight, I really applaud the Environmental Commission for working on this. I mean, that's your task. Look to see what you can do to be more environmentally friendly and such. And the thing that I like about, many different things that I like about this, one is what you're doing with it and why you're doing it. But what I'm looking at too is it's not going to go into effect until the first of the year. And whether it's $10,000 in the budget or $40,000 in the budget really doesn't matter, because we can amend the budget if we see a great success. I think the beauty of that also is if we do see a great success, we might want to step back and take a look at it, because now we're using more electricity, which we like to do as a selfish reason because of the excess electricity we have. the Environmental Commission is accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish by using electricity versus gasoline. But on the backside of it, we're now, as the mayor said, we're now not selling gasoline, which the state relies on, we rely on. It's now part of our revenue source for our general revenue expenses, with what we've done over the last couple of years with taxing gasoline as a home rule authority. And so, you know, there's pros and cons to it, but just like I think it was referred to as the low-flow toilet rebate that we did years ago, it took a couple years for it to catch on, and then it caught on, and then I think we were pretty much spending all the money that was in the budget, but then we decided that we really didn't need this anymore because every toilet you buy now is a low-flow toilet, so we just really don't need to do that. So we can look at this thing twice a year if we want. We can change it. We can alter it. We can, we can increase it, we can decrease it, we can see how it goes. You know, I think the Environmental Commission did a great job of coming up with a great idea here that we ought to go forward with and explore it and see how it works out and go from there a year from now. Dan?
Oh, what do we make a year in motor fuel? Is it like 100,000 or something like that? It's not substantial.
Oh, it's a lot of money,
It's
especially with our 2 cents.
Okay, but let's just, we're gonna have a lot of electric cars to have a noticeable difference in what our take is. And besides, a lot of our gas stations are on roads that people from other towns
Right.
Participate in. If we saw a blip in this, that would be a fantastic problem to have. I do believe that, and I don't think we'll see a blip.
Susan?
I think it's a good idea. The only problem I have with it is the ratios, because $1,000 for the purchase of a car is a drop in the bucket. A $500 for the installation of a charger is almost the whole price of the charger. That's just the price of the charger, not including installation, so it'll be another $500 to actually install it. But it's still at about 50% of that versus, you know, not even 10%. Well, it depends on the car, I guess. So the ratios just seem out of balance to me. If you are going to buy an electric car, you have to put in a charger. So the numbers are not making sense to me. So I just wanted to point that out.
Lucy?
Well, I was getting back to Nick's comments. Did you feel that this is a luxury item, that people are going to buy this kind of whether they have the inclination to...
Teslas are.
Okay, but
Good
both
percentage
aren't.
of
Some
electric cars
right.
are,
But-
but not all of them.
But when you consider the savings, the gas savings, that's like a mortgage payment or a loan payment on the car. And before, when there was the rebate from the state, that was really great too. So now we don't have that. And I think that they're tipping points. If you feel that you're doing something good for the environment, you realize how much money you're going to be saving not paying for gas, and then you add this on top. I think it could sway people a little bit, saying, look, at the city's
I
income.
agree. I think it's a great program, and I think an incentive is a great concept, and it's a great program. I think we need to be more conservative on how much we're giving.
Okay.
Something is still an incentive for them if they're incentivized by that. If somebody's incentivized by $500 or $1,000, and if they gave me $1,000, I would do it. That's probably not going to happen. So let's promote it and incentivize, but I think we need to be cautious that, and maybe do studies on how much it, in the next year, how many cars apply and how much are we really saving. But to go all in on a 5-year plus ROI because we want to sell electricity, well, we're not really making that back. People won't even have these cars for 5 years. I mean, in theory. So it doesn't make
They
sense.
won't have them for 5 years.
Many cars are,
You don't keep your car
You
for
don't
5
keep
years.
your car.
I guess maybe we've had our Volt for about 5 years, and we saved, I mean, it was an expensive car, but when we considered the savings on gas, it was no longer an expensive car for us. So I guess that's what I want to say, is
and
they're
there's your
really not.
incentive. Plus you were doing
Right,
good for
but
the,
you kinda
and you
said it
bought
was
it
a luxury.
without a neighborhood
Right, well,
incentive.
but we did have the state rebate. So, but I guess,
Right.
some people say, oh, it's kind of a luxury, but it's not if you consider the saving. I guess I wanted to say from our perspective, if you consider the saving.
Right, and I thought I
Okay.
mentioned there's luxury and then those who do it for social reasons, so.
But
Mark?
it was money
Mark?
too.
I think the only way I would maybe change it, I think Alan mentioned it, is the fact that there are other incentives out there already from the federal government. We'll see what the state does. But if we were to just do it on the charger,
station.
that tends to be the thing that, I don't know if, when you did your research, Lucy, if you knew that, oh, yes, I have to have a professionally installed charger. I don't know how many people are looking that far and seeing the fine print, that is a thing. I don't know how many people just think that they can plug it into a 220 that they happen to have in their garage and not realize that, oh, I void the warranty if I just do that. Those are the kind of things where all of a sudden somebody's like, oh, I was thinking of doing that. Oh, shoot, it's going to cost me another $1,000 for that. But I have this $500 incentive. Rather than hitting the cars, get it on the chargers.
Well, maybe that's what the
And
incentive
that
should
gives
be then.
more, and that
Is-
gets us to do
support
more
that as
cars
well.
or more of them, because now we can do 20 instead of 10 if we do $500.
Maybe that's the incentive, is up to $1,000 to install a charging station, because you can't have an electric car without a charging
And
station.
maybe there's somebody who buys it and charges during the day at their office, their company supports that or something, I don't know, but, and they weren't gonna get a charging station, but we want the back end of it.
Right, exactly, which was more important to me than the car itself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I could plug it in at work, my commute's so short that I wouldn't plug it in at home.
That's my brother-in-law's problem.
So I wouldn't buy one. I'd be
From
like,
Athens to Atlanta. At the
I'd plug it in
airport,
somewhere
they don't have charging stations for the employees. He has to park it in a regular parking lot to get to plug it in if he's gonna leave from there and go somewhere else.
But now, if I could ask a question, a charging station, when it's installed, is it permanent? Or like if you were to move, do you take that with you?
I don't, it looks like it.
Typical level 2 charging station either can be hardwired or plug in. Most people up here, we don't have exterior laundry. I mean, a lot of people don't do laundry in the garage, so you won't find a lot of 220 volt outlets in the garage for any reason. You may find them in the south because they're much more common for electric water heaters and stuff. But up here, you won't find many of them, so that's part of the nature of this program is someone wants to install a 220 volt outlet, they need to get a permit. And when we know they're getting a permit for a car charging station, then that's how we can track the rebate program. They can wire it hardwire, but my 2 cents would be if you're a smart consumer, you would just get a plug-in one, because that way you can take it with you.
Right.
Yeah.
well, I mean, Lucy, I don't know, GM requires the professional installation, don't they?
Who requires it?
General
GM?
Motors for the Volt.
We had, I think so. We had a professional installer. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if they.
I don't know how the volt, do you guys have the option to do a level 1 or just a 120 volt plug? Your car may not, but a lot of them do. You can do like the Nissan Leaf.
No, I get it, but I know
You can
some
do
of them
like
you
14
have to have
hours
it.
to charge yourself.
Yeah,
but you
if
can-
we're out and about, like at a hotel or something,
Yeah.
we'll bring along just an extension cord.
So you can, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
See, and that's the thing I was gonna say is maybe along with just the $500 installation one, we also have something for an upgrade. Say you have you bought it, you didn't wanna spend the money on to put in a charging station at your house, so you just use the 14-hour plug into any 20 amp outlet, and then you can charge it anywhere. So that's what some people do with them.
Well,
But if you wanted to upgrade to it, then maybe we offer something to upgrade for the people that already have them out there and want to go to the next level charging station.
Here's what I think on this. I think, baby steps. The Environmental Commission obviously spent a lot of time on this and put a lot of thought into it. We all got differences of opinion probably and would want to tweak it this way or tweak it that way. I would really just suggest that we just go along with it the way they've suggested and review it in a year. The only way we're going to be able to track it is if we do go with the $500 when you get the installation, so we can get a building permit. That's how we're going to be able to track the usage and how many people are taking advantage of things. And so I would really suggest we just try it for a year and track it and see how it goes and run with it. We can have a lot of discussion about how we'd want to change things if it even gets used. We might find out that one person uses it and it's maybe not even something we want to continue.
Use the toilet one, they'll use this one.
But I guess that's why I would say just do it on the equipment, because if you do it for a year, but 2 months in, or 3 months in, 6 months in, all 10 are gone, well, now the rest of the people, it's like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more, and we're done. Whereas if you do 500, and we could do 20.
Yeah, but that works that way with the facade improvement grant and everything else that we do. We put so much in the budget, and we And we can change it. We can change it again in a year.
It's more people.
Do you
In my
guys
mind, it's
feel?
more cars. That's what I think is the better part of it.
Does the Environmental Commission feel that there's people out there who are more sensitive or to being responsible to buying this car without the incentive, or the incentive is what pushes them over the edge?
There's probably some of both. I mean, I personally would love to own an electric vehicle, but finances are a hurdle for us right now. I drive a 15-year-old Buick. So we don't trade cars often. It's a big investment for us. This sort of thing would certainly make me, consider making the leap, but it's a big investment for folks like me.
And I think the question of incentives and how well they work is a valid one, and I think we'll go back and do some more research and to see what other programs have been done like this, what incentives have worked and what haven't. And I think a lot of us, these days are looking to our local governments, knowing that probably the state's not going to bring it back. The federal government's probably not going to be super reliable for this either. So I think it would look great.
Yeah. Oh, it would, and I appreciate that, and I love the program. It's just, with the state in kind of leading us to go local on this, but we have our own issues with the state financially and budget concerns, so we just got to, if we can stretch it out, I think it would be great.
Marty?
Yeah, I'm less comfortable with the car purchase, just because I know the federal government is out there with, I think it's $7,500. That's, and there's other, which I think go back to the ROI and some clawback provisions for vehicles, not keeping them that long, say, and working from the insurance side of it, if a car gets totaled, you've kind of lost that money and in the long run, because you're not going to get reimbursed for that. I am more intrigued by the installation and the of buying them instead, because those are more permanent fixtures. And in my mind, the more that you start having them at residences, that could become an amenity that then increases property values, because more people start thinking of it that way. They start looking for houses that have these features, so they might pay for these things, pay a little bit larger price for a house. Gary brought up the permit fees for that. How much is the permit fees?
It's simple. It's an electrical permit only, $85.
So I think a coupling with a financial would be waive the fees on that. That doesn't have a budgetary item, and there's not really a cost to that. If it's being professionally installed, I don't think we have anybody on staff that's checking that anyways, do we? Okay. So I think it could be a combination of not just all cash and money that's going out to incentivize these things, but maybe figuring out a different way of incentivizing, because it could in the long run. If they know they're not having to pay fees, they know a bunch of other steps that could go along with it, that makes it more interesting for people to kind of bite into.
Dave?
Susan?
I think based on the average price of an electric car, even on the low end, it's more expensive. I mean, we often think in terms of $35,000 for a car is not that much money. Well, for a lot of people in town, it is a lot of money. So when I look at this, it's not like just the run-of-the-mill car. It's not like I'm going out to buy a Chevy Spark, that I can get for under $15,000. This is an investment in a car. I would much prefer to talk about it in terms of charging station and waiving the permit fee than to talk about subsidizing the cost of the car. So, I think that it's buying an electric car is a personal choice that people make, and if we incentivize them by just the part that actually affects us, which is, that charging station, I think that that's a better compromise. So I like that, Mark has said we can spread the money out further. if people take advantage of it. If they don't, we wind up with more money left in our budget. But
think-
I won't support it the way it is.
And I think that's kind of my thinking along with it too, is it becomes more of an investment in infrastructure in the long run, kind of the same way as we did the toilets. It's not going anywhere. It's going to make a house more desirable. And if you have people upgrading and making their houses nicer in the long run, it improves the housing stock, and it has a whole bunch of features in a community that might have more people moving here because of an improved housing stock. Cars can move and cars can go. And so that's where I'm a little on the portability of cars. I would like to invest it more in our infrastructure,
So
residential.
this isn't an actual resolution looking to be brought up, right?
No.
Just a discussion. So, I mean, I would propose for future reference that that's what we do. We offer a residential rebate program of $500 for installation of a charger, and we waive an $85 fee. Permit fee.
That solves your ROI issue too.
Right.
You pay for the charger,
It gets
someone's
that
more
half
likely
the
to
time.
replace their car with another car then?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's fair.
with another electric car, or somebody that leases one or gets paid through their company and
And-
they want a new one every 3 years or every 4 years. If that's true, are they gonna come back and apply for a rebate every time they get a new one?
Plus, no matter what we do, we still plan, I would have the intention that we review this in 6 months, a year, and see how the program's doing, but at least we're not too far out over the skis in a commitment that.
What, Abby, Andrew, what do you guys think of that? Give us some argument here.
Well, I mean, so the only flip side of that is the environmental aspect, right? The $1,000 encouraging the electric car rebate would be the forward-thinking, proponent if the city wanted to be out there really promoting the electric car purchase and usage. That being said, fully understand, that if you want to bring it back in a little bit, focus just on the electricity, aspect and the providing of the electricity. I think it's a great step forward.
Yeah,
And
I
I
guess I would hope that people still see it as, it's still forward thinking, and just, it's a requirement. Like I said, I know GM requires a professional installation. So somebody may not be thinking about that when they get to the dealer, and then they're like, but okay, Batavia's gonna give me 500, not a big deal. Now I understand where Batavia's coming from, and that it's giving this incentive. So I would hope that people wouldn't think that we're saying, well, we don't want you to buy an electric car, but we do want you to spend more money on electricity. I hope that's not how people would construe that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of how the program's pitched. It's, if you're buying an electric car, Batavia has a rebate program available. Or if you're even thinking about buying an electric car, Batavia's got a rebate program to help offset the cost of installing the charger.
Do we have a communication person that can help solve that?
If only.
We do.
And
I
then,
would be in favor.
Gary, maybe a question for you. I mean, because obviously this is something that would go in next year's budget, so would this be something that you and Peggy and Environmental Commission maybe talk about how we would want to handle? Do we write them a check, or do we, take it off of their monthly bill? What's the easiest thing for finance to take care of on this?
Yeah, Peggy's reply was exactly that she's going to look at and see what the easiest is on her end, whether it be a bill credit or actually issuing a check. So she's on vacation, and she just asked if we could kind of give that to you guys as options and let her decide when she gets back. So.
Okay.
You don't feel.
And the idea of promoting it as we want to encourage electric vehicles, and we're going to give you a rebate to assist you with the cost for installing a charger, that's a great way of doing it.
I like that way too, but I support the original plan that the Environmental Commission supported or proposed, because they've given a lot of thought to this. And I think that it's kind of their area of expertise. And so I would defer to them, but I think it's a great program. I don't know how much value a charging station really adds to a home. It's maybe a $500, $600 item. And, I think you could take it with you. I think you could pretty much easily, even if it's hardwired, undo it. Electrician could undo that and put it in the back of the car and move it up north or wherever you're going. So I think it's a great program, and I support it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lucy. I mean, I'd like to see it pass just the way it is, but, if the majority of the council wants to go with, the installation rebate only, I can certainly understand that, so I'll support that too, but I like the way the Environmental Commission put it forward to us.
I would agree with that.
Okay,
So well, how does this happen next?
well, we don't have a resolution or anything, so we're gonna hand it back to Gary to get with Peggy on, but we need to give him a little bit further direction, because we just heard three people say, go with what the environmental commission's got, and it sounds like, I mean, let's just do a straw poll here, we can't officially vote on anything. Those in favor of, supporting the rebate program as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's 4. Those in favor of supporting the rebate program with a $500 installation rebate with an $85 credit towards permit inspection, permit fee, to be worked out in the future, all those that support it, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those against it, and it looks like we got that one for your direction.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, you got anything else on that?
No, I'm gonna have to have Peggy tell me where she's getting this $1,000 per car from.
No, it's 500.
500.
500 is where I
I
mean,
thought you just voted for $1,000.
No, no.
500 is the
500.
majority that's here.
And it would come out of the electric fund.
It would be out of the
Yeah,
electric
something
fund, and I think
to
that that's
promote.
something we have to think about as well, is, you know, we just can't, it's a great idea. I'm not taking anything away from the time that the environmental commission put in it, but somebody's got to pay for it. And that's something that we have to take into account when we decide on this. And this is a program we're starting out. We don't start out and just throw cash at it. We have to feel like we get something back on it. I mean, Nick makes a great point about a return on investment. My fear, or one of my questions on it is, if it's a leased car, how do we treat that? If it's a purchased car, how do we treat that? Do people get to do it every 2 years if they buy a new car every 2 years?
Well, if we're
No,
not
one
voting
time
rebate on
only.
the vehicle, we don't have to worry about that.
One time only?
No,
Well, that's
it'd be-
why
That's what Gary said.
that helps the lease person, because if they still pay for the electric
Company
or
car.
the charger.
Right, and that's why I think
Right,
just the charger rebate, I think, is the good thing.
right. That'll affect more consumers.
And if somebody decides that they gotta have 2 electric cars, they can get 2 chargers? Can they get 2 rebates if they buy a second car?
There was one
If you
rebate.
had 2 electric cars, you'd be better off purchasing an electric charger that has the 2 ports on it.
Okay.
You get a 50 amp circuit and it just services 2 cars off of one machine. Yeah.
Well, that was gonna be my next question, was if somebody already has one and then they decide to upgrade, get another one, and they buy the new charger with the port to split it, can they get the rebate?
Well, we're probably not gonna know if they already have one. I mean,
Right.
they're gonna come in and.
So that would,
It's not just with
that
a
would be
receipt.
irrespective of the old,
Yeah.
and they can come in and get a rebate.
Again, I doubt there's many people who have them, so if there's gonna be a few that already have them and wanna get a new one and submit a receipt that they've just purchased it, we're probably gonna have maybe a couple of those. Vast majority, if you're gonna get one, you're gonna be brand new and a new installation.
Dumb technical question, is there opportunity for abuse here at all? Or you just get a copy of a receipt and that's?
Yeah, I mean, just like we did with the toilet program,
'Cause
we
like
have,
if
we have to have proof of purchase.
You get a
and-
drop for like a hot tub, I mean, you know.
Well, they're gonna have to get an inspection, though.
They're gonna have to
You have to get an
an
inspection,
permit,
yeah,
so-
yeah, it's part of the permitting process.
So are we still including $10,000 total, though?
We will include $10,000 in the 2018 budget. If city council wants to alter that total value, they can.
I think we ought to leave it there. I think, just like the mayor says, we got a lot of things on the budget coming up. Start
Get
there.
20 new people with electric cars, will be happy, and then we'll talk about it with a big smile.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This month on my 3 cars.
Okay, we'll go on to resolution, item number 7, resolution 17-98-R, authorizing change order number 1 to the contract for North River Street parking lot with Evans and Son Blacktop. Alderman Wolf.
This is the new parking lot immediately across the river from us right now. And if you read through the memo, you'll see all the changes and the different things. And Gary could provide us with more info if anybody has any questions on this. Understand what we had, the differences where we changed the retaining wall and the different fill we had to use. Any questions?
Some of the added scope also, in addition to those 2 items, was concrete work supporting the electric infrastructure for the State Street and the new Washington Place project.
I had one question on that.
Yeah.
If that's for the electric stuff, is that come out of the electric budget, or is that all part of the upgrades for One Washington Place? Is
That technically probably could come out of the TIF budget, but
Okay.
I don't know how Peggy wants to break it down.
Okay,
I mean,
and that was gonna be one of my questions, if Peggy's not here to answer that, we can get that answer later, but
But
that was one question.
the
I had
electric
for the
infrastructure is coming out of TIF.
Okay,
And so that particular concrete work for the curb and sidewalk repairs could come out of TIF. At some point in time, it becomes more of an administrative burden to do it than to just,
okay.
I just had nothing related to the change order, but related to the parking lot, Gary. I'm just wondering, should there be the exit coming out or entrance going in, but it's the exit going out also? Should there be a stop sign there? Because you're coming out into a live sidewalk, which is also the bicycle path, and there's just nothing really saying stop here before you cross the bicycle path.
right. And if you drive around a lot of driveways, they don't have stop signs. I mean, there was a debate, and Alderman Atack brought that up when we first opened that parking lot, or maybe Alderman Stark did too. Installation of a stop sign there would require also ADA improvements to the bike path.
Okay.
And so if you go up and down a lot of commercial driveways, there's no physical stop sign to prevent you before going out into the road. You just, as a vehicle, as a driver, you know before you enter a public roadway, you look left and right and yield to traffic.
Maybe a sign that says warning bicycle path?
Yeah, it's
Or-
different if there's a bike path, though. I mean, you don't
Pedestrian.
always
Well-
cross a bike path when you're leaving a parking lot.
That's an MUTCD question that I can't have Bill Cullum look into, whether some sign like that would be permitted.
I've seen some, close calls, but nothing's happened yet, and I hate to see something happening. Just because you put up a sign doesn't mean something won't happen, but maybe we should look into it.
And I have a question about the parking lot too. I've noticed several people tried to turn into where the bike racks are. And I was wondering if we could
Are
potentially.
they still trying to do that?
Yes, they are. I saw two people do
Bike
it last week.
racks.
Yeah, it's like they slow
Benches,
down.
a garbage
and then
can.
they're like turning. Oh, there's a park bench, a garbage can, and 3 bike racks. Oh, I guess I shouldn't turn here. So I'm wondering if maybe what we need is not huge, but a larger green sign. Because there's no sign that faces, if you're driving north on River Street, that you can see where it says, there's not a sign that says public parking. That shows here's the entrance kind of thing. That might get people directed to where they need to go, because it's very funny to watch people do that. They just really start to slow down, and then they're like, oh, I can't park or can't turn in here anymore. So
Well, yeah, is it someone who used to be able to turn in there and no longer can? I mean, is it just a matter of timing?
no,
Getting used to it?
these were confused looking people who were going to Pal Joey's. So it's it might be people from out of town or something that
I'll
have
see
no
if we
idea.
can get an additional
Yeah.
sign at the.
That would be great.
entrances.
Alderman Wolf, you want to call a motion, Alderman Wolf?
Yeah, I look for a motion on resolution 17-98-R, authorizing change order number 1 to the contract of North River Street parking lot project with Evan and Sons Blacktop in the amount of $22,301.84.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by O'Brien, second by Chanzit. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent
Okay.
agenda?
Consent agenda.
Thank you.
Alder?
The amount of the contract, I think it's different on the printed agenda than it is on the online version.
I wouldn't go off the agendas, I would go off the memo. So the final amount of the contract is $247,945.60.
That's the total.
What's the difference?
The change order was.
Change order is $22,301.84.
Yeah, this is 23,000.
Yeah.
So that's
Printed
less,
one?
that's good.
On both the online and the printed one, it says 23,095.59.
I'm on the electronic one right now on the website.
Yeah, now it's just on the item number or on the item
Description.
description, not the actual number.
We'll make sure that.
On the resolution, it's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading it off of.
All right.
So we'll make sure the agenda is consistent.
Okay, item number 8, ordinance 17-57, approving the TIF redevelopment grant for Spillane and Sons Incorporated, Laura Newman's memo. Alderman Atack?
Yes, so this is the first TIF grant request we've received out of TIF 4, and it is for exterior and interior remodeling at 225 South Harrison Street. So they're requesting a pay-as-you-go grant, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they're looking for about a third of the total value. So they're looking for 23,600. Chris, would you like to elaborate?
Sure, thank you. A couple of things. As the Alderman said, this is the first request for a TIF grant from TIF 4. It's interesting because there's kind of a collateral development immediately next door by the same developer. The one at 229 is also being remodeled, kind of a depreciated home, but that's actually through the Kane County Community Development Grant Program for affordable housing. So we're really getting two structures, and I think it's kind of neat that you've got the county encouraging, economic redevelopment and housing rehab, and the city is as well, all in the same block. So hopefully that'll trigger more private investment. But to get to the point with respect to the money, as far as TIF eligible grant activities, the total cost is approximately $70,000, just over $70,000, and the request for funding for those activities is like Alderman Atek said, is on a 2-to-1 basis. So about 33.33% will be funded through grant, and about 66.67% is going to be the private investment. All told, though, because there are some items that are not part of the TIF components, all told, the private investment, not including the purchase of the property, is $110,000. Interestingly, we looked at this property. This is one of our kind of targeted properties when we did the eligibility study for TIF 4, and found that this property hit 7 of the 11 statutory criteria for depreciation. And you'll see that the project components actually address those characteristics of depreciation. So we're kind of effectively using TIF to target and attack the problems that are causing blight in the neighborhood. And also, this was another one of the examples of properties within the TIF district where we saw a steadily declining EAV over the course of time. And here, with the redevelopment, we're estimating that the EAV on the property will more than double. And finally, it should be noted that this particular project is almost completed. And ordinarily, we come to you before much is done on a project, improving the but-for clause. Why would the person make this investment if he didn't think that he could get some assistance? And if that were the case, then he'd be eligible, as opposed to why would the city give him money now that he's already all in? But I can tell you that before Mr. Spillane bought both properties last fall, he and I had a meeting to talk about TIF 4, TIF activities that are eligible for grant work, and he took that all into account. So that and the fact that also there were some issues with getting alternative bidding that took some time. And then finally, there was some delay in determining through staff and our city attorney if we wanted to incorporate another initiative by Mr. Spillane, which is he wants to purchase property immediately west of this property, which is part of the old railroad right-of-way that runs, southwesterly, northeast across the properties, from Walnut all the way past Maine. And it looks like we're going to be able to make that property available to him at a purchase price. At the time, we thought we wanted to retain an easement for access, in case we do put a bike path in there. But it was determined by staff and our city attorney that shouldn't complicate this RDA itself with that, but instead, in the conveyance documents, in the sale of the property, we'll get that easement. Last note I did want to make, and again, just for a quick explanation, we mentioned pay-as-you-go. The way this works is the city's not at any risk. We don't front any money. The project gets paid back. The developer gets reimbursed as the increment comes in. So we think it'll take somewhere between 5 and 10 years, depending on the assessed value that the assessor puts on it. And I used a range of between, I think it was $200,000 and $250,000 approximately. That more than doubles the estimate of a rather EAV that's currently there. But if it comes closer to 250, it's probably going to be 5 to 6 years. If it comes closer to 200,000, which I think is a low end, it'll be closer to 8 or 9 years. The reason we're calling out 10 years is because if there are children from this project, from this particular development, that go to our public schools, the public school is entitled to some rebate of the increment, up to 40%. So if they do have children, the schools can ask for up to 40% of the increment, so that will kick it back. But we do think that it'll completely pay off the 23.6, certainly within 10 years. And so the developer each year just accumulates the tax increment, which is kept on a parcel by parcel basis. We know exactly what the increment will be based on what the base value was, and then we just cut them a check towards these eligible expenses. One other tidbit that I wanted to mention, and it's a slight monkey wrench, but we want to get it out there, is the staff has recommended, and it's part of the agreement, that as a condition, that the property owner, developer, dedicate a 10-foot wide utility easement along the south end of his property. That's for utility and drainage and access to get at any appurtenances we were to put in there for infrastructure improvements. The developer at this juncture wants to talk more with staff about that. He thinks it'll have an effect on his ability to maintain property value there if there were infrastructure improvements, particularly those that are above ground. And so he wants to talk more with staff about that. That will happen this week before the council meets. I think September 7th or 5th, I think, is the next date you meet, on a Tuesday night. So I would recommend that the council move to the city, I'm sorry, the COW moves to the city council 17-57, the way it is now, but understanding that we may come back and change that language with respect to that 10-foot utility easement along the south end of his property. And after that, I can answer any questions. Mr. Spillane is here if you want to have any questions of him.
How far along is the project?
Well, I think the most recent inspection was in the spring, but that was framing, in April, framing. So it's got to be getting pretty doggone close. He hasn't come in for a final, and there has not been an occupancy permit.
So he's at 33%. He's paying 66%, we're paying 33% with TIF funds, and we're locked in at that. So if his prices, his costs go higher, we're locked in.
It won't pay more than 23.6 or actual cost.
Right.
And that is 33% of the TIF eligible expenses, and we're not counting the expenses that are not listed on that, the list of items.
Has his cost gone up? Have they come in to what he's saying, or they?
Well, it was bid out, and I'm sure he's paying what the contractors are requiring. We obviously haven't paid it all off yet, but I think it's consistent with what the bids were.
With what the bids were, okay.
Marty?
Yeah, I just want to say that I saw it within the last week, I think last Thursday. It looks phenomenal. I mean, it's great work. Both houses look really, really good. And I think that goes back to why we initially set that as a goal for that whole area as a TIF, was to be primarily residential, and that's where most of the TIF money and the TIF improvements are going to be, and I think it's a really good start.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to beget more private investment in the district, which was the intention of particularly these early grants.
Right.
I was by it as well. It is, a total improvement. It's a night and day difference from what it was, both of the houses.
That's your ward, isn't it, Alan?
Yes, it is.
Marty? Yeah.
Really close to my house, too.
Anything else? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to recommend to council recommended approval to council of ordinance number 1757, an ordinance authorizing execution of a TIF redevelopment agreement with the Spillane and Sons Incorporated relating to the building improvements at 225 South Harrison Street?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Regular agenda.
Regular agenda. We can report back on the easement question on the 5th.
So you'll send a email out to the council before letting us know if there's been any changes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Next item number 9, resolution 17-102-R, award a contract for sanitary and storm sewer lining for Hoyer Construction for an amount not to exceed $221,002.74. Memo from Jeremy Barkey, but Gary, you gonna take this? Or I'm sorry, Alderman O'Brien?
Well, this is basically, we joined forces with Geneva and St. Charles to cure and place pipe the lining for our sanitary sewers and our storm sewers. It sounds like it's a good deal, a lot of savings. So I'll let Gary take it from there.
Thank you.
This is the second year, actually, that we've joined forces with them on this project. If you recall, we also, this year, we're going to be renewing our solid waste contract, so we'll be working with both those communities on the solid waste contract like we did last time, and also our mosquito. So we're trying to get more and more contracts in place between us three, where we can combine our forces. We did get good favorable pricing. As you might expect, some pipe sizes are really, really good and some pipe sizes are less good, but on the whole, it's very favorable pricing. So we are recommending the award to Hoyer. This includes a 5% contingency. The amount would be $221,000 and then $2.74. And that will address sanitary sewer pipes in the city of Batavia, and Scott Haynes has a small list of storm sewer pipes that are in rear yards and difficult to access, and this is a good technology to fix those as well.
Any questions or concerns for Gary? Gary, I have a question, I guess. How much were our savings? Did we have a price going it alone?
Well, we didn't bid it out
Anything to
specifically
compare
alone.
with?
Yeah, we didn't specifically bid it out alone. Last year, we estimated based on the pricing that Fox Metro had. Fox Metro did bid their program alone. So we had the option, we still have the option of using Fox Metro prices versus the Tri-Cities prices. And last year, we saved about 15%. So I honestly don't know the percentage this year, but that maybe give you a ballpark.
Okay. Another question is, it says here, that there was a 24-inch sanitary pipe that nearly collapsed. How
That
would
is the one under Main Street at Main and Batavia Avenue.
Right.
So that's all tied. It was all roughly connected to the sinkhole that we had out there about 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
So we were thinking that we ultimately, with the Main Street project, are going to have to open dig that and get down there. We've now had it looked at by a couple of different pipelining companies and engineers, and they're all confident that we could do it with pipelining. So that's what we're moving forward with. Be able to line that pipe and not have to dig it.
Even with the collapsed pipe?
It's more of an oval. It's kind of a bellied pipe right now than it is actually physically collapsed. Structural collapse you couldn't do it with.
Right.
This right now is still within the tolerance that they're comfortable doing it.
Okay.
How much do you lose when you do this? If you got a 24-inch interior diameter when you start.
Yeah, on a large pipe especially, the percentage of loss is pretty small. You're maybe a ½ inch to a 3/4 of an inch total lost. And like in a storm sewer pipe, if you have clay pipe or you have a CMP, you're actually gaining flow velocity. Even though you're reducing diameter, you're increasing you're decreasing the roughness coefficient, so you're increasing the flow capacity. That's one of the things that that's why this technology kind of is so popular, is that it doesn't impact your flow capacity, but it allows you to rehab the pipe.
And it hasn't been around that long, so I mean, how long is it?
20 years.
To last?
It's been at least 20 years.
20 years.
I know that I've been doing it.
So seeing good success.
Yeah, it's made to be a 50-year improvement.
Okay.
How thick is that lining? It's about 1/4 inch thick?
Well, it depends on the size of the pipe, but yeah, on a large pipe, it's about 1/4 to ½ inch thick, correct.
Anybody care to make a motion?
So move.
Second.
By Brown, second by ATAC. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, thanks. Gary, I just have one other question regarding this a little bit, maybe. It seems like we're working quite a bit lately with Geneva and St. Charles to try to get some benefit from larger contracts between the Tri-Cities.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we, or have we, or what's the reason why we don't include or talk with North Aurora on this?
We do, actually. North Aurora is, we just did like the water tower cleaning this year, where we went together with their contractor to clean the water tower. So Jeremy, coming from North Aurora, has opened up that door to us, and Laura has also reached out to North Aurora's administrator. So yes, that avenue is becoming more and more.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks, Gary. Next item is project status. Do you have anything for us, Gary? Does anybody?
Questions? And I have one other item under other, but we can wait for that one. But I have questions if anyone has any.
Lucy, do you want to, so it's on TV, do you want to ask about the street improvement program you were talking about earlier?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm interested in how we might communicate to the community a little bit more about what's going on with the street program. I've had questions and people feel that they really don't know. And I know there have been problems with Geneva Construction, I recognize that.
Yeah.
And it's gone on longer than you planned. But we might be helpful if we reach out to the residents, maybe more through social media or maybe some direct, I don't know, letters.
There is an interactive map on our website that residents can
Okay.
click on and get an interactive information that is updated for project status. This year has been a challenge with just scheduling. There's been a number of scheduling issues this year. But right now, as of the status, Geneva Construction is on the east side of town doing milling of streets. They'll be working on the west side of town doing concrete, so then as they resurface the streets on the east side, they'll be over milling on the west side, and then they'll follow up with resurfacing on the west side. So within the next roughly about 2 or 3 weeks, they should be through that process, and the vast majority of streets in town, completed by that week of roughly around September 18th or so. It would be the last week.
Okay.
And yeah, we
Maybe we could be a little more specific on social media about what's happening each day or something like that.
That's a little fluid and dynamic. That some of this goes to staff resources. We could spend a lot of time doing daily updates, but we don't.
Well, maybe Chris Cudworth could help you. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. That would be, maybe he
I
could
just-
get out there. Okay.
I hesitate because it kind of. I understand there's a very much a need to communicate out, but at the same time we have like 2 people. I mean, that's all we have. So there's a balance between having those people in the field or having those people in the office communicating out, and so there has to be a balance. There has to be a good communication. I don't disagree with that, but we have to balance, and that's why we went to this map on the website.
Chris is good at getting it out pretty fast. But thank you. I appreciate it.
We're on the east side.
We have various streets on both sides of town. I mean, the most high-profile one on the east side is Hart Road. That one is going to be starting to patching tomorrow. I believe they're going to start doing the asphalt patching, and that was part of the water main project. That was part of the coordination issues this year. Is we had a sewer project on the west side and a water main project on the east side, which were purposefully left below the surface in order to have the contractor come in and do the resurfacing project, and then again, timing was not our friend this year. So we had an issue with our contractor who, for various reasons, did not do very good scheduling this year. And it's kind of unusual for him because he's usually a very good contractor.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, thanks. Item 11, others. Anybody have another?
I have another.
Gary?
Go ahead, Alderman.
I'm sorry, Dan?
Very briefly, I understand this is probably going to be very unpopular, but I understand that enough people have been squealing on Piggly Brown, and he has finally received some tickets. Have seen enough images on social media and enough people telling me that this pig is around town without a leash. I've observed it a number of times, and it just feels to me that we have an exception in this case. Pigs are illegal in this town. We made a specific deal that this pig could be kept as long as he wore a leash, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I guess I would ask if another alderman would join me. I feel like the owner of the pig should come back to the committee and explain himself.
I'll join you on that, Dan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that message, I guess, then has to be conveyed to code enforcement.
Yeah, code enforcement.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody have anything else, Gary?
I have another, and I need to speak somewhat in generalities because this potentially could get to litigation, but it's not there yet, so we really can't talk about it in executive session. Alderman Chanzet and Alderman Meitzler know all the details because it happens to be in their ward, and we've been copying them in all the correspondence. It basically was a sewer issue that occurred at the end of last year, like so in November into December of last year. A resident had a sewer issue. They called a Fox Valley area plumbing company who came out, assessed the sewer. That company determined that it was a problem having to do with roots. with a tree that is a city tree, and then they applied for a permit. I think it was 11 days went by before the work actually commenced, and they began work at the house way up outside of the street, and then they began to commence to replace the entire service line. The city became aware of this issue kind of after the fact, and the residents were hoping to get reimbursement from the city for the cost of replacing their sanitary service. So some of the big, and we have not been given any of the videotape evidence from the plumber. When the plumber went through the pipe, they apparently either didn't tape it or haven't provided it to the resident. But we have no real evidence of this notion of it being a parkway tree except verbally from the resident that it was a parkway tree. So our city procedures are this. If someone calls up and says they have a root problem in their pipe and they notify us, we go out, we do this all the time, we push a camera through their line and we determine where the problem is. We have a program in place in our ordinance that allows for root cutting and then a retreatment of root cutting if the roots come back. We have a program in place and we have made sewer repairs for people. So if their sewer is damaged by a parkway tree, the city takes our crews and we go out there and we make the repairs. In this case, again, from the time the initial inspection by the private plumber occurred, a plumber who works in town quite often, by the way, so who knows our procedures or should know our procedures, till the time they actually began was like 11 days, and the city received no notification. The first time we were notified of it was when we went out and did the inspection. So, and then even at that point, we weren't notified that the resident wanted cost reimbursement. So we've held our ground in that we are requesting that the resident provide documentation to show that it was the parkway tree that was the issue, and we have not received that documentation. And so I leave it at that because the resident has stated they may take it further to legal action. And again, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on that at this point in time.
Yeah. Anybody any questions for Gary on that?
We're not going to get any video evidence, are we? We're not going to get any statements or anything?
I would doubt it. Correct.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Anybody, anything else?
Yeah, I got.
Mayor?
We've been having, in my opinion, a very bad problem in town the last couple of months, I guess I would say, with some homeowners, or property owners, I should probably describe them, who are not maintaining property. And this has gotten to be, I can't say enough of how much Rhonda from our building inspection department has tried to work with some of these people. Some of it is just almost plain spit in your face type attitude by some of these people. That's one situation. Then we got another situation where we have a house in town that, for whatever reason, it appears to have been abandoned. And when you start growing weeds out of the east truss, and the front door's got a tree growing out of the middle of the sidewalk on it, you got the neighbors calling me up as the mayor saying, what's the city doing allowing this quote-unquote ghetto look on our nice street in the city of Batavia? So apparently nobody's living in this house, but the owners don't want to apparently do anything about this. So Rhonda now we're in some extreme steps. We've filed adjudication against them. We're hauling them into court, and we're trying to get some action to this. I'm going to suggest that we adopt an embarrassment program in Batavia, and that we go in front of some of these houses and we say, this home is now subject to City of Batavia adjudication for property non-compliance. And that we mount the sign in the parkway out in front of these houses. Because at least people driving by, we've got at least one resident that Jeff Albertson and I are familiar with, who's called me and called him a number of times, claims that they're trying to sell a house and that one of these embarrassment properties is derailing their ability to sell a house. Now, this isn't immune to any particular part of town. It seems like the two situations I'm talking about, one's on the east side of the river and one's on the west side of the river. So they're a little bit scattered all over the place. But I've asked our city attorney to draft some language that I intend to bring in here in the next few weeks, and he's going to probably come along, and we're going to talk about what I will describe as the embarrassment ordinance, that we will start posting some signs in front of these properties so everybody in the neighborhood at least knows the city's trying to do something about this, because the one shot I'm taking at the moment is that the mayor and the city council are sitting here and these terrible things are happening in these properties and we're not doing anything about it. So I think if you're going to play this game with us and allow your property to get so derailed and so degrading that it's causing a big problem here, that the city council needs to identify that we are actively trying to take some action to put these properties back into place. You know, this is a good thing in some respects for Batavia, because in some of our older neighborhoods, we've just had a fantastic restoration and renovation of some of the older housing stock, both on the east and the west sides of the river, and all the neighborhoods that specifically surround our old downtown. This has been a very progressive thing, and we've had some. So if you are one of these renegade property owners and you don't choose to follow the norm, you really do start to stick out. I mean, it doesn't take long before suddenly you're highly visible because you're not maintaining your property. And fortunately now, because of people like Mike Spillane and others who come in and have bought these places and flipped them around and done work on them, we now have a whole bunch of housing that's available. What I'm finding is for the younger people to buy and to be able to move back into their own hometown or whatever. So there's a lot of good stuff happening here. But now, because we've got a couple that, for whatever reasons, are just failing to want to play within the rules of the system, some people are really starting to stand out. And when they start thumbing their nose at my building department or myself, where I get all these neighbors now calling me up almost on a daily basis about a couple of these properties, I just feel like we need to do something. So I'm going to bring the ordinance to you guys, and you can do with what you want. But that's the modus operandi, or the reason for the ordinance of embarrassment that I want to bring in here, because I don't know how else to deal with this. And some of these folks we've talked to for months, and it's, oh, we don't know, we don't have our paperwork together, or we got one house we don't think the owner's been to in many months, and seems to want to just act like they don't want to do anything with their property. So I just want to let you know it's coming. We're going to bring it in here and let you guys chew on it, and Kevin Drenzel's going to come in and explain to you what it is we're trying to do. And it's nothing more than poking the sign in the parkway out in front of the house, letting everybody know, hey, this baby's under adjudication, and the city of Batavia is trying to bring, right some wrong here, but, it's going to take a while for us to get this accomplished in the legal system.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Speaking of people that give you the, oh, well, someday soon, we got an update on the gas station demolition?
Actually, work did start on it today.
Yeah.
Not on the actual demolition of the building, but they started disconnecting the utility services today. They were out there with backhoe. They actually disconnected the water service today, and they were trying to do the sewer and the water service today, but they ran into some issues with the water service they didn't expect, so it took them all day to do the water service. But they are actually they were mobilized on site today, starting to work on it.
Good. Anybody else have anything?
Dave, one other thing. We've got an executive session on the agenda.
Right.
And I'm going to suggest that we don't go ahead and do that, take it off. We'll postpone it to a future meeting. The reason being that I put out, this is for the review of the city administrator after a year. I put out the survey form that hopefully all of you got, but 5 of you have not responded back to me with your comments. And so I really think that for Laura's benefit and for our review, we need to have everybody churn in. I talked to Laura about this yesterday before she left, and she was fine with it. She said whenever we get it together. So if you haven't sent it to me yet, please do. Thanks to all those of you who have, but it's a little bit, not quite half of you haven't sent it to me yet, and I don't want to do it with that many absent. So that's the reason I'm just going to suggest we postpone it till I get them all in, and when that happens, I'll be on the agenda telling you we can have the conversation now. Okay?
Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Stark, second by Janzik. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adjourned.